Welcome to Life-Changing Challengers, the podcast where passion meets purpose. I'm Brad Banis, your host, guiding you through stories of transformation and triumph, from endurance feats to overcoming adversity. Our guests defy the limits and inspire action. Ready to ignite your desire and incinerate your barriers? Join us. Your journey to the extraordinary begins now. Welcome to another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Banis, as always, and I am really lucky and really excited to be talking to Dr. Lynn Banis. She is a grief and resilience mentor. She's a founder and owner of Widows Rising Together, and it's a pretty amazing organization, and we'll talk a little bit about that, how that got started and everything. But first, Dr. Lynn Banis, how are you today?
I'm great. How about you?
I am excellent. Thank you. So, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, what was the complement of your family, and what was it like to be Lynn as a kid?
Okay. Well, I grew up in a little town in southwestern Michigan, about 13 miles north of Notre Dame. And my husband said it was Mayberry on steroids. Yeah, it's pretty idyllic in that it had a lot of home offices. So it brought in some people for like Simplicity Patterns, National Standard, Connier, a bunch of big, so that brought in people that were interested in the arts and so forth. So, for a little town, we really had quite the opportunity. I had a wonderful childhood. I grieve that our society has changed so much that it's so different. I mean, I could hop on my bike in the morning and be gone, and my mom didn't care. She knew I was safe, and, I'd get home for dinner and just have a great time. And when you're in a small town like that, if you do something wrong, somebody's going to see you and tell your parents. So we were all pretty good. And I had a lot of advantages. We lived within 20 minutes of Lake Michigan. So we would go over and water ski and, there was a little mini mountain about 40 minutes from us in the winter. We'd go ski. So we just had, it was just, like I said, Mayberry on steroids. So it was great. And my family is very, very close. My parents were great. They were wonderful mentors and didn't put their expectations on us, but really encouraged us to, go for it and do the best we could.
Nice.
Yeah.
I grew up around Chicago, so I wasn't too far from where you grew up. And my childhood was somewhat like yours. When we moved there, it was a small town, and it just grew up as I grew up. But it was pretty much the same thing.
What was it?
Yeah, it was a little town called Bartlett.
I used to work in St. Charles.
Oh, but see, small world. When I went there, we moved to Bartlett. We lived in Hanover Park, which is like right up the street, but we moved here in 1977 or something like that. It was really much the same thing. My parents would just say during the summer, get out, go ride your bike, get out, do something, go get dirty, whatever. Just be home by the time the street lights turn on, or be home for dinner. Then you could leave again and do some stuff for a couple hours and just be home by the time the street lights turn on. Yeah, and that was the way it was. And it's just not like that anymore, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I mean, you grew up around kids that if they wanted to play football, they just went out to a sandlot and football and frisbee and baseball. Yeah.
A lot in between our house and the next house. And it was all grass. It was part of their yard. It became baseball, football, ice rink, you name it.
So what did your parents do?
My mother was a teacher, drama coach, and she went to the Goodman Theater. You might be familiar with Goodman.
Yes.
My father owned an independent insurance company. Just good old Midwestern folks.
That sounds just like in my family, I've got a couple of teachers and a couple of insurance agents, so I get it. And you said you had brothers and sisters?
I have two brothers. Well, I had two brothers. I lost one, but I'm the rose in the middle.
All right.
And younger.
What was high school like for you?
Oh, I loved high school. We just had a great group of friends. We did everything together. It was just awesome. I have enjoyed school. I mean, obviously, I enjoy learning or wouldn't have a doctorate, but getting up every morning and going to school was great.
Yeah.
Life and your job.
Right. Any extracurriculars?
Oh, there weren't any for women then.
Okay. Well,
And
me in my place there, Dr. Lynn.
it was nothing for us. And so I ended up playing keyboard and I played the pipe organ. So I would literally walk to church after school and practice and then walk home.
Okay, that was not nothing. It just wasn't a part of the school. That's awesome. So you were musical? That's great. So obviously you liked learning, so you probably did well in college. And then where did you go to university?
I started at University of Michigan in music school, and I just couldn't figure out why people would rather go practice than to a Big Ten football game. So I decided maybe that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. And I ended up transferring to Beloit College in Wisconsin. And then I got dual masters in Virginia Beach at Regent and doctorate at Old Dominion University, industrial organizational psychology, leadership development.
Beautiful.
Yeah, global change management, all of those fun things.
Oh, wow. How long did you do that for?
I did it for Andersen Worldwide, which was the parent company of Arthur and Accenture. We were in Chicago for 17 years. My husband was with Northwestern.
Oh, beautiful. My cousin's alma mater.
Great.
Yeah, no, great school. Matter of fact, that was the first college I visited because she was there already. She was 2 years ahead of me. So it was my first college experience visiting her for the weekend.
Oh, that was fun.
It was a great time. I'm not sure she thought that, but for me, it was great. Still remember it. She was a good host. So did you work for Andersen right out of college?
I started out as a teacher and got frustrated with the public schools and ended up getting counseling degree. And so then I worked my way into corporate America.
When did you meet your husband?
I met him in about 85. I was doing my doctoral work. He was also doing his.
Oh, in Virginia? Nice. So he dragged him back to Chicago with you, huh?
I know. He got the job at Northwestern first.
Okay. I see how it is. No, so just what did you do at Andersen?
I was in a group that did performance management. I did a lot of coaching with partners all around the world and helping them figure out why their leadership team wasn't doing what they wanted them to do and helping them be more productive and enjoying their jobs much more once they could get the communication and so forth all straightened out.
Yeah, I did some of that myself. I worked for Tampa General Hospital. I was in organizational development and got a chance to do some of that myself. That was fun. I was a project manager and I kind of like managed the project. And as I was managing them going through this culture change, they kind of made me a facilitator. I built out all the new rooms because we were adding in this brand new EMR at the time. And it's a long, long story, but I ended up in the second part of the project. One of the other projects was to change the culture. And we talked to Franklin Covey and we got them and we got onto Stephen Covey Jr.'s Speed of Trust team. And it was when they were first coming out with this thing. And it was actually really cool. So I get it. And I think it's a fascinating way to spend a career.
Oh, it is.
Because it's so positive. What you're doing is making people better.
Yeah, making them better, making them enjoy their work. And then they enjoy the people they work with. They enjoy their clients. And, it's great. I must say, Andersen was an amazing place to work. And speaking of being in organization development, it was also an amazing thing for someone with that background, which you would have enjoyed too, to watch it.
Yeah, I think I got onto one project with Andersen. It was like 3 months though. It really wasn't that long. And then I was out. It was just a quick thing, quick turnaround. But anyway, so you know what I'm trying to do is it's so funny because I'm sitting here and we get to the meat of what I want to talk to you about. And I know we have to go to this 3 years, this 3 year stint. And I know we have to that's where we're moving to right now. So it's kind of like, I know we have to take it down a notch. So I'm trying to
just get too far down.
Yeah. I'm not trying to delay it, but I'm trying to and it's not working. So I like to be transparent with my audience. So this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to keep this in. I'm not even going to edit it out. So anyway, let's talk about that 3-year span that kind of took a little bit of a spiral down.
It did. And, like a surprise to me, my mother came to live with us when she was 100. She was an Olympic diver. She dove for the Women's Athletic Association in downtown Chicago. She dove in the 32 World's Fair into the lagoon off the 30-foot tower with Buster Crabbe and John Weissmuller. And she was first alternate to the LA Olympics in 32.
Did Flash Gordon catch her?
Not quite, but
okay.
But anyway,
there's going to be a load of people that listen to this that have no idea what I'm talking about.
That's right. She came to live with us. She was fantastic. She didn't have a cane or anything at that point. And she lived till she was 106. She was healthy on top of things, but she fell and that broke 18 ribs and you can't breathe.
Oh, man.
So that was a deep loss, but you have to say it's not totally unexpected at that age. And after I left Anderson, I went into my own business, started my own coaching business, and I did that partially so I could have more time with her. So I was just very blessed to be able to spend that time with her. And shortly thereafter, I got a call in the middle of the night that my little brother had a massive heart attack and died.
Oh, man.
And then within 2.5 years, my husband passed away. So it was compound grief for sure.
Wow. That's got to be devastating. I can't even fathom what that might feel like.
And that's part of the issue we have in this country is that people don't really understand. I mean, you can't know what it feels like unless you've been there. I truly do believe that. And most widows will tell you that because it's just, there's no words to describe it. But, we've got to break down the taboos in this country around talking about and learning how to support people without being so afraid that we don't know what to say. So we just, move away and leave them alone. One of the biggest issues with grief is the incredible loneliness.
I can only imagine. So I've lost some people like close to me. My grandmother was 96 and she died in her sleep. My grandfather was 96. My grandmother was 98. And it was a grieving process, but they had lived such great lives. They'd taken good care of us. They were healthy up to their 90s. And even my grandmother was healthy up to 94. So it was a loss, but it was like, we knew it was coming, right? So that was not a big deal. Right after COVID or right during COVID, an aunt of mine passed from COVID, but she had some underlying condition. So my uncle, I'm going to the funeral and I go to my uncle and I gave him a big hug and I was like, Uncle Bruce, I'm like, and I stopped myself. I was about to tell him, man, I really understand what you're going through, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him and I went, you know what? Hey, Uncle Bruce, I can't tell you that. I cannot tell you that I understand because I don't.
Yeah.
I really don't understand. I can't fathom it, what you're going through. You know what he said to me? He goes, thank you.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I do is I try to do talks and stuff to help those of us who are not grieving understand how you talk to and support someone. And I also, with the people who are grieving, we're widows and widowers, I'd have to teach them how to teach their family and friends to interact with them. Because we're just...
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I want to go into this with you, but I'm lost for words. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about it just so you know. So you just talked about that we don't know how to talk to our right. friends, and our friends don't know how to talk to us as far as when somebody dies. Is that what you found during that time?
I have 3 daughters and they were amazing and their husbands were too. So my close family was great. But what happens is they have busy lives and they go back to their lives, and then you don't feel, and I think almost all people who are going through grief feel this way, is that you don't want to be a burden. So you don't say anything. When somebody says, "How are you doing today?" You say, "Oh, I'm okay." And what you really want to do is scream and say, "I'm horrible. I feel like," whatever. And there just seems to be no end to it. But nobody wants to hear that, so you don't say it.
You don't think anybody wants to hear that.
Exactly.
Okay, great. I was waiting for you to say that. Because no, I totally am okay with, if somebody went through that, I want them to say that I feel like crap and I just lost this person and this person, blah, 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 and have them cry on my shoulder, and I'd be fine with it. Not everybody is, but I would be. Whenever I've talked to people in my family, my friends and stuff that had lost someone, that's, we want that actually, is to get that.
Absolutely. And we want the hugs.
Of course.
You can go for weeks without having anybody touch you. And, so if you were used to getting hugs every day, and they say we need I don't know, between 15 and 30 a day.
Really?
Yeah. And most of us don't get that many, but if you go to nothing, it makes a difference. You feel it.
Well, I'm behind.
Well, you ready to grab something?
No.
Or get a couple dogs.
I have 7 cats. They do all right. I have a few of them that actually like me. It's cool.
There's no break sometimes.
Yeah. I really am not addicted to cats, but I am addicted to adopting them. That's my problem.
Oh, I
you know what I mean? You walk into a store, someone's got kittens, you're sitting there just like, I just want to make sure they're okay. That's my addiction. Well, I'm going to have to go somewhere and a chip after they start, because I'm a year without adopting a cat. Let's talk about the compounding, right? So you lost your mom, and whether, she was at that point in her life, it wasn't, to me, I would be thinking, and maybe tell me if I'm wrong, it's not that she did go, it's how she went for you, I would imagine.
Exactly. Yeah, it was, I had always just hoped it would be a peaceful go to sleep and not wake up, but we don't have a choice.
How long would you say that you were in a grieving period at that point?
After my mom passed?
Yeah.
9 months or so.
Okay. And then you said, was a year and a half before your brother? So you were just starting to get better,
Yeah.
And then you lost your brother.
Yeah.
And that was a shock, right? Because that was out of nowhere.
A total shock. He was 9 years younger than me, so he was a young kid, and he took great care of himself and ate properly, and just was a total shock.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm an endurance coach. You can see it on screen. I help people do things like marathons and Ironman triathlons and 100-mile races and obstacle course races and stuff like that. Some really, really crazy stuff that most people, when they just hear about it, they're like, they run away. But I help people do that. I've been in 5 races where, somebody had an issue and either ended up going to the hospital and not expecting it, and then people that have died. And you're talking about people that are in great shape, that in one of these races, you don't toe the line if you don't know that you are 100%. You just don't do it because it's dangerous. I had an Army vet during Chattanooga, and he ended up having a heart attack on the swim. I ran the Chicago Marathon, and there was a firefighter. Now, these firefighters are in good shape.
Yeah.
400 meters from the finish line. Collapsed, had a heart attack, and died. So this can happen to anybody. So that's something we always got to be thinking about. And I think that part of my message to people is to do things hard, to go after things much bigger than yourself, much bigger than you can imagine that you can do. And even if you've got to keep striving for it, you will get there. But the journey to getting there is going to take care of a lot of things for you as far as mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, right?
Yeah.
But your brother, guy was in shape, took care of himself.
He ran about 10 miles every morning.
Jeez.
Between 5 and 10 miles a day.
Wow.
So, I mean,
It's just,
you can see why it was a shock.
yeah. So I can imagine that probably took a little bit more than 9 months.
Yes, it did. And then within a year, my husband passed, and that was unexpected.
Okay. So that had to be like, so here you've got compounded grief. What was what was a day in the life of Lynn Banis? Let's say a month after your husband passed.
Total brain fog, zero motivation. I didn't want to do anything. Thank goodness I had a dog that got me up in the morning and, took care of her. No appetite, just real lonely, very confused about what bills needed to be paid and what kind of subscriptions Bill might have had in magazines and all that kind of stuff. Wondering, when are they going to tell me bills are overdue again? At that point, people had pretty much disappeared.
Oh.
So, they show up the first week, 2 weeks, and you have more food than you could possibly imagine. And then they go on with their lives. And, my neighbors were always really, really kind and great, but much younger than me. So there's, come over for a cup of coffee or anything like that. So, yeah, that was really a tough time. And when we think about compounded grief, we also have our societal grief that we don't think about. And we have a tremendous amount of that when you think about COVID. And so many people were lost in COVID, the change that we've talked about in our society, and we see our country changing so much that we are all grieving to some degree and don't even realize it. I think that's one of the reasons why people are so stressed and exhausted a lot of the time, because all this stuff is so different. And every time you turn on the news, you have something negative coming at you.
I remember sitting down. Now, my father was like, all right, if you're going to stay awake, you need to sit down and watch the news, because he was very particular about making sure that I knew what was going on around me. And I think there was one time, I think I was 10, 11 or 12, in that 10 to 12 area, where you sat down, and I asked him that question. I was like, Dad, how come it's like, it feels like, except for sports and the weather. Well, I lived in Chicago, so even the weather is negative. It's like, we're not talking about people doing good for other people. Once in a while, they'll throw you a bone and they'll be like, hey, this guy saved a cat from a tree. Yay. But we counted it once, and we were like, it was for every 6 stories, there was one thing that was positive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just gotten worse and worse.
Yeah. That's what sells. That's what keeps people coming negative. You don't understand it. Yeah.
That is so sad. But I think that has been a shift in our society that people just eat that stuff up. That's what journalism has sadly turned toward.
Yeah. I consider that a lot of our news sources, mainstream media, for lack of a better term, is not journalism anymore. Now it's opinion media.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the phrase I would use. And it's quite horrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just as a human being, things happen to people, and it doesn't matter what your political view is. The fact that it's a human being, that is either doing something or getting something done to them.
Yeah.
And we strive on it. Not me. I would, if somebody had some sort of channel that was all positive news every day, I'd be addicted.
Yeah, I would too.
You found that you kind of got alienated, and this is where you thrive in the business that you're doing today, is because you are actually showing people how to communicate, how to be with somebody that is going through this process, correct?
No, I wasn't. I was struggling to figure out who I was and where I was going, and which is part of the process, because you lose your identity. Absolutely everything in your life changes from the time you get up in the morning till go to bed at night. Your brain rewires itself immediately because it's trying to protect you. And it does that because what's around you, what you interact with all the time during the day become reference points. And your brain can make sense of that. And you then can function. But when a major individual person is gone, there have to be changes for you to continue to cope and be able to be oriented. And so that's one of the things that we have to do once people get through the process of those first 5 stages, and they can regulate their emotions a little bit and the brain fog is lifting. Then we try to work on helping them rewire their brains to help them move forward. So, because there's so many changes. I struggled. I really struggled for a good year.
How did you were you able to function it? Because you had a company at this point.
I had shut my business down when my mother came to live with us.
Okay. All right.
I did things that I would never tell my clients to do. It's just me. I've always just put my head down and forged ahead. I downsized because our house was huge and it had a pool and a big yard. I couldn't handle it all by myself. And I kept looking at things and thinking, oh, that needs to be fixed. I need to get out of here. And so I did move. And after that, my body just screamed and said, stop. And I was sick for 3 months with just one thing after another. So that gave me a lot of time to think through things. I kind of had an epiphany, actually. I woke up one morning and I thought, I don't care how old I am. I've got all the skills. I've got all the knowledge that I need to help people through this process. So I started to go back and look at everything I went through and what would have helped. I was doing a lot of it for myself and never thought about it as, just kind of did it organically because that's my training. And so I just decided that's what I'm going to do. I created the programs and started my business, and it's just been amazing.
That's outstanding. So you went ahead and you started this Widows Rising Together. Is that what it was originally called?
I called it that, and I'm different than most of the support that's out there. Most of it is like grief groups, and they get people through being able to regulate their emotions pretty well, but that's it. And that's not enough. I take them all the way through, working through their thinking processes and stuff, and figuring out who they are based on values and beliefs so they can create a new identity for themselves. And then we work on vision for the future, creating a path forward and stepping into that next chapter of life that they have created the way they want it to. So I do that kind of work, which there's not much out there for people.
So give me a quick an example. Let's say that, let's just call her Jane. She's 70 years old, just lost her husband. Jane just lost her husband of 50 years, and she's gone to grief groups, maybe made a couple appearances at grief groups where she's maybe just starting to finally, maybe she's past denial, but not yet to acceptance. And what would a program for that be? Just as an example, how would you help Jane?
I would usually wait until they're past through the acceptance part of it,
Okay.
because they're still not regulating their emotions very well. But I need them to have enough clarity that they can really make decisions and think through things, because I spend a lot of time working on self-limiting beliefs, the worldview, the perspective, teaching them to look at things from a lot of different perspectives, all OD stuff and coaching stuff, realigning values and beliefs. I do a study with them where I'm sure you're familiar with Csikszentmihalyi and flow.
Yes.
So when they're in flow, I do a study with them to figure out how they do things, granularly, and what environment supports them in that. And so then we begin to look forward and put things together, the values and all that stuff, and create figure out what their purpose is and what their new identity is. And then we can go forward to think about, okay, so what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want this next chapter to be? And, we work it so that it is all supported through the work that we've done so that they can move forward and not stay stuck.
Wow. That is absolutely, that's 100% value right there. I think my uncle's not a very open person, but man, I think he would have definitely, it would have been an advantage for him to talk to someone like you after he did that. I mean, he's great now. He was lucky that, his daughter brought him in, and she had a garage with an apartment above it where she lives, and he's very handy. Like he's built like stuff that I can't even think about. Inset shelves and depth and, does this great stuff. So he remodeled the whole thing. So it gave him a project. So he got purpose, like right away.
That's important.
Yeah. So, but I know that he was, that he was hurting there for a little bit, but he wouldn't talk about that with me, but I think he talked about it with my dad, who's his brother. I can see how that absolutely must, it's got to be just wonderful for you to see someone come out of that and have success with it and be able to move on with their lives.
Right. And they create a legacy, for their family and for their friends, somebody that can step up and do those things. That people look up to them and think, wow, that's pretty cool. And some people say, well, if she can do that, I think I can do that.
Well, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I can't imagine now that you talk about it like that. I mean, obviously I haven't been through it myself, but I can imagine not having something like that after you like you said. And I think I think that was an excellent point that you go through the grief group so you can get to that acceptance stage, and then they can work with you to find out what's next.
Yeah.
Do you do any help with like, tangible stuff? Like what about them and their kids? And I wouldn't call it like estate planning or anything like that, but just kind of like, okay, well, this is where you're starting. You got to make sure that, things are together and organized. Do you do anything like tangible? Like where's your life insurance, and that goes here, and blah, blah, blah. Or
hopefully that's done by some of the grief groups, early on, because, you can't wait with some of that stuff. Right. But I do work with them on things like family dynamics, because they usually change a lot.
Right.
Person, you may take on a whole new role. You may become the matriarch or patriarch, or you may have a different, role that doesn't have a lot of responsibility with it, or whatever. Or you may just become real independent. I've seen a number of people who've taken this as just, this is a huge advantage. I can create what I want to create, and I can be who maybe I wasn't able to be all the time, because I was always, catering to somebody else, which I'm not saying that's negative, but I'm just saying, in a way, some people really blossom.
Yeah. Oh my God. I just thought about this. I saw a reel today of a 104-year-old woman skydiving. She took her first jump off the thing. I just thought about that.
Well, George Bush Sr. did.
He did it on his 100th birthday. Yeah. But this woman was 104, and, and today people are looking younger and younger. It was great. I can tell you how big of a smile I had when they're like 104-year-old, da 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 da, and she was having the best time.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Yeah,
So
somebody that has the desire and the drive to go do something like that is going to have fun.
yeah, but I think, but when we think of it, was I was going to ask, not ask you, but I was kind of make the comment about bucket lists, right? There's a lot of things that we throughout our lives we're like, oh, that's on my bucket list, that's on my bucket list, but then we get busy, right?
Yeah.
I imagine at this point they're like, well, I had that stuff on my bucket list, and I imagine you could help them get to the point where no, you're not too old. Like that's what I think about. I'm like, listen, if a 104-year-old woman who needed help getting onto the plane can jump out of the plane and have a great time, there's nothing all of you can't do.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that that's just a huge thing, and that's one thing I use as we begin to look around and say, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to, how do you want to be now? Sometimes those bucket list things are just wonderful, wonderful areas of gold and nuggets for people.
Yeah. Oh, and I met another guy on a cruise ship. He was at our table, and he was telling us that he got rid of everything. Like, he got rid of his car, he got rid of his house, he got rid of everything, and he just keeps bouncing. He gets off of one ship, walks on to another, gets off another ship, walks on another. He just lives on the ship, and he's got kids in one of the ports, and he's like, whenever he gets to that port, he'll maybe spend a day or two with his kids, and then he'll jump right back on a thing. But he's like, he was telling me about it, and I was like, yeah. He said, no insurance. He says, he was telling me that his overhead was something like $10,000 less a month than, I mean, this is just straight up nut. Just the whatever he needs. He goes, he says, my biggest bill outside of the actual cruise is laundry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He said that was his biggest bill outside of that, because, on those cruise ships, they go by weight or they go by piece or whatever. But he goes, yeah, that's by far, he says, that's my biggest bill. He says, I've got so many like cruises and stuff that they give them to him. And then, and he was telling me that, a lot of them, he'll just walk on to the next one without a reservation. And because a lot of them know him now, but other ways is that, they'd rather you fill the cabin.
Yes. Yes.
And pay for drinks and pay for, whatever, than not. So he'll get like the cabin for free, pay a nominal amount for his food and tips and stuff, and his laundry, basically. Yeah. He says, and that's it. That's all I got. I don't have insurance. I don't have any of that stuff. But I thought that was but that's when he's gotten it. So he saw the world 2-3 times over.
Yeah.
I'm not getting tired of it. He says, I love it. So,
well, that's awesome. That's not for everybody, but I think, it sounds intriguing to me.
Yeah. And like you said, whenever he got to a certain port that his kids were in, he would just stop, spend a few days with his kids, see his grandkids, and then jump back on another ship and go somewhere else.
Well, I'm working on providing some transformational travel for people where I'll take them for a week or so. It's not a vacation.
It's a retreat.
But I'll have a team that will work with people. We will do group things. We'll do small group things. We'll do individual things. We'll do things that will help them have breakthroughs so that they can really be in a place where they're looking at the world differently and walk off there with a clear vision of what they want to go to next, what they want to do next, what they're visioning for their future. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
I think you are going to help so many people with that, Lynn. I can't even imagine, just for the fact, one of the big things that I'm thinking about as that's happening, as this retreat, the one thing that I know that people, because my uncle told me about it, and in certain parts of my life, I remember that as well, is nighttime. Is like, everything's great during the day, but now you're providing them, now they're going to have a bunch of people around them So when nighttime comes, the only time they'll be alone is when they have to put their head down on the pillow. They wake up and more people are around.
Right.
So I got to imagine that's got to
Community
be
is
a big
huge.
help.
Yeah, community is huge. And, if they're going through things like that together and working in teams and so forth, they're going to build a community that lasts. They will bond with people. And, I foresee, getting them started on meeting every once in a while and keeping things moving, keeping them going, supporting one another.
That's awesome. I'll tell you one last anecdote, and just to drive that point home. My parents just moved out here 2 years ago from Chicago, from Bartlett. And I hope she's not listening. But my mom was kind of a pessimist and a skeptic my whole life, right? And it was just one of those things. And I love her. I still and I love her more than anything in my whole life is my mom and my dad. And my dad would always tell me, she goes, because he worked from home. He had his own business. He had own businesses, but he worked from home a lot. Mm-hmm. And he was like, God, he goes, he get on the phone with me and he's just like, she doesn't do anything. She gets up, she gets on the computer, she makes me breakfast, then she's back on the computer, she's watching TV, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't do anything. Oh, and he's like, I told her to go volunteer, to do this, to do that. And I was like, and I think a lot of it, there was a loss of purpose. Like she loved it when I came home because she would cook and she would do all the stuff and she wouldn't stop. And then later on, my dad would so she didn't have this purpose. Well, they come here and, obviously they moved here for me, and which is great. And they're getting older. And my mom, also my dad goes, I don't know, we were about 3 months in that I'm doing her. She goes, your mom is a different person. I'm like, what? She goes, she's so happy and she knows everybody. And then I talk to her and she's like, yeah, well, Monday I play Mahjong and we have the Shalom group. On Tuesday I play, today, Tuesday is euchre. And then I've got the genealogy club. And then we have the book club on that day. And then on Wednesday, she's like all the way down the road. Like every single day is populated with activities and she knows everybody.
Yep.
Well, we're set to go on a cruise, my parents and I, and we get to a point where, anyway, it's a week before my mom falls and shatters her sacrum. So we can't go. So she ends up going into rehab where she gets COVID and then she transfers to my dad.
Oh boy.
So I go to my dad's. I go to my dad. I'm like, hey, I'll take you out to dinner that night before we leave. And because they got the insurance, not me. I didn't get the insurance because, the insurance didn't cover me because it was my parents, not my, not my wife or myself or anybody. Right. So it didn't cover me. So you have to go. And I'm like, well, all right, listen, if I was a parent, I would want my kid to go too. So I'm not going to fight this because all they're going to do is fight with me on it anyway. So that's not even worth it. So I'm like, all right. So the day before we go, I go and he's like shivering and stuff. And I'm like, Dad, you have COVID. He goes, no, I took the test. It says it was negative. I says, now wait to take tomorrow. It's going to say it's positive. Shivering, hurting, the whole bit. Well, it turns out my mom came home from rehab. He ends up going into the hospital, but their community, she's like, yeah, Deb stayed with me a couple of days and Mike took your dad here and there, and this guy did this and this. They all came over. We had more food than we knew what to do with. I mean, it was crazy, the community around them. And just by what you talking about having community around you when you're grieving, she was, they were having issues, they were having health issues. Not that my parents wouldn't have done that for any of those other people. They would have, but just this community. And that is the first time that I saw how powerful that really is.
Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Yeah. It can just really help someone reestablish their whole sense of self and confidence and, the whole 9 yards. It's just really healthy for people. And I'm assuming they're in some type of a retirement situation. And, that's just, I think, I think it's excellent.
Yeah, they're in a Del Webb community, and brand new too. Like they moved in, the clubhouse wasn't even finished yet. But yeah, so all brand new, and so like all these people are in the same boat, you know. And then actually they're close to being the oldest people on the block, you know, because they're 55 and older, right?
Right.
So that's yes, but yeah, it's absolutely powerful. Yeah, but I'll just never forget. You know, my mom she's just kind of negative. You know, I mean, people grow up that way and just happens to be that way, and you know, but I'll never forget. So I go to the same woman that does my hair. I've done since I've been here, and I've been here 20 years. So of course we sent my mom up there to see Kelly. Her name is Kelly. Kelly calls me, or I call Kelly to get an appointment, and she goes, "Oh my God, your mom is hilarious."
And you're going, who's he talking about?
Hey, do you know who my mom is? Do you remember who my mom is? She goes, yeah, I had actually dropped something off at their house. I actually was at their house too. So yeah, I know who I'm talking about. And I'm like, you sure? Yeah, it was like that. That's how much she changed just by having this community around her.
Yeah.
So
it's awesome.
The development, it's so just incredibly powerful. So I'll leave it at that. But thank you. So yeah, I'll have to see this. app.widowsrisingtogether.com. She has tons of stuff on here. She's got topics, she's got courses, she's got action lists, she's got directories. She's got so much information on this website. You all have to go check this out. And I'll have that in the show notes. She is Dr. Lynn is on Facebook, LinkedIn. Looks like you've got a YouTube page, Instagram. She's got all those things for you on her site. I'll have those linked directly in the show notes, and anything else that I could possibly imagine, I'm going to put there too. All about Dr. Lynn and the Widows Rising Together organization that she has. So I think you're gonna love that. And you've got and if you look at her Facebook, she's always putting her Calendly link so that you talk to her one-on-one. So she's really made herself available that if you're in a situation where you're kind of getting over grief, that I think this is your resource right here. This is why we do things. We do this to help people. And this is good, especially since COVID, this has been going on. And there's a lot of people that are in this position and just don't know where to go from here. And Lynn is the expert here. She's been through it herself. And with her background, she's able to use it. And that's a very positive thing. Use it to create courses and ways for you to find your new identity and your next step in life. So that will be all in the show notes. If you'll be watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and hit the subscribe and the notification bell just to make sure that you're notified anytime that we drop a new episode. If you're on Apple or Spotify, go ahead and leave us a little review. And I don't even care if it's a good review. You can go ahead and leave a bad review, because at least at that point I'm getting feedback and we can make this podcast evolve and make it even better. So, and I appreciate that. But Dr. Lynn, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And this was just a fascinating discussion, because we really brought an entire life and showed people, how you can use things that you've experienced through your life to create what you want to create. And I always tell people, all you need within you, your experiences. You just need to find somebody who's willing to take you and walk you through the process of moving forward and just really helping you get there. So
I couldn't have said it better myself. So for Dr. Lynn, myself, thank you so much for listening, watching, and we will see you in the next one. Well, that wraps up another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Banis, saying thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. If today's stories inspired you, please take a moment to review, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create an even bigger impact. Remember, every challenge is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep pushing, keep challenging, and never stop pursuing your extraordinary.